Glad to have you back. Mr. Tony Elumelu, chairman of the United Bank for Africa, says he believes Nigeria's economic growth requires more than short-term interventions. Mr. Elumelu spoke on Tuesday at the Charter Institute of Bankers of Nigeria's 17th Annual Bankers and Finance Conference in Abuja. The conference was themed Accelerated Economic Growth and Development, the State of Play and the Way Forward. Mr. Elumelu said 2024 has been a tough year for Nigerians, especially with persistent surge in inflation that has eroded the purchasing power of Nigerians.
My strategy is centered on three critical areas, just three. One, access to electricity. Development is impossible without reliable access to electricity. Power is a fundamental resource that impacts every aspect of life, from hospitals, schools, to homes and businesses. Nigeria cannot industrialize. Our youth cannot be educated without ensuring our abundant natural resources are translated into plentiful, robust power for all. A power ecosystem that encourages investment and unlocks our economy is critical and urgent. To accelerate our progress, we must enable our power sector to guarantee reliable electricity for all. Second strategy, security. To protect our people, feed our people, attract investment, and foster trade, we must prioritize security. Insecurity has become a national crisis, which must be dealt with decisively and urgently too. Our people deserve to go to their farms unhindered, live peacefully, and conduct their lives and businesses without fear. It is the fundamental right of every citizen.
Mr. Tony Elumelu there, a financial economist and director, Institute of Capital Market Studies at Nasarawa State University, Kefi, Professor Uche Waleke, joins me live from our Abuja studios. Good afternoon, Prof. Thank you so much for joining the program.
Good afternoon, Tolu. As always, it's my pleasure to be on your program.
I think some of these issues raised are issues that we've been talking about for some time. But let's pick it up from where Mr. Elumelu stopped. He talked about electricity, youth empowerment, and of course, insecurity. What do you make of this? There's an overview of that speech.
Yeah, Tolu, I was at that event and I listened to him. The theme of the conference, the Charter Institute of Bankers of Nigeria 17th Annual Conference, was accelerating economic growth and development, the state of play, and the way forward. And of course, Tolu Elumelu spoke to that theme, starting with the state of play. He reviewed the macroeconomic environment, the fact that inflation has remained elevated, and of course the consequences of that. He also talked about the fact that the economy has been witnessing tepid growth, and is particularly worried about the fact that the manufacturing sector has been struggling. He also talked about the fact that as a country we have been importing more than we export. Even if you look at the recent trade statistics by the National Bureau of Statistics, that talks about imports declining. If you look at it critically, you realize that the major exports we still have, we still do is oil. Okay, so if you consider that, you will now, situate his concern, the fact that we've remained an import, dependent the country. And then he went on to proffer suggestions around three key areas. He said, we require, a comprehensive, strategy rather than, short-term interventions. Strategies that revolve around, in terms of priority, access to electricity, security, and youth empowerment. On the issue of access to electricity, Tolu, you will recall that even when I appeared on your program the last time, I said that was critical because that is, for me, again, concurring with his position, it represents the bedrock of any economic development. No economy can develop, without, electricity. In that program, I had also likened the economy to a car. I told you an economy can be likened to a car, and the most important component, of a car, in my view, is the engine. Okay, is the engine, and for me, in an economy, that engine is electricity. Because that is what will power the economy. Okay, a car is a vehicle that takes you from point A to point B. Okay, and for us, desiring to attain a $1 trillion economy, the only way we can get to that, attain that dream, is to ensure that our power sector, is working, that people have access to electricity. This is a country where access to electricity, according to the International Energy Agency, has been put at just 55%. In countries like South Africa, for example, is as high as 85%. In the North African countries of Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, access to electricity is nearly 100%. So how do you compete with such economies where, access to electricity is very high? So it is very fundamental. Again, for me, it represents the foundation of any development we are having. Whether you're talking about the SDGs, you're talking about the issue of ending poverty, or you're talking about ending hunger, or improved health as SDG number 3, or education SDG number 4, all of them, okay, are linked to SDG number 7. And SDG number 7 talks about affordable energy, affordable and clean energy. Okay. Number 9 talks about industrialization. Okay, infrastructure. They are all linked to this issue of electricity, and that's also why I think that even the government's 8-point agenda, okay, that talks about food security, economic growth, job creation, they are all linked to this very important measure, which is the electricity, access to electricity. So it's very critical, and we need to work on it. And I'm happy we already have an enabling law, the Electricity Act of 2023, which has also given the states, companies, even private people, the right now to go into not only electricity generation but also transmission and distribution, unlike what we had in the past. So today, currently I expect that state governments and including companies should take advantage of that law and go into establishing power plants, particularly those ones that have little to do with the national grid. So we should promote off-grid solutions, mini-grid solutions, because that is the way these other economies, have gone about addressing the problem, rather than relying every time we rely on the national grid, and when the national grid collapses and everything becomes grounded. Okay, look at the education sector, for example. That sector can develop without electricity. Today, a number of universities are, having very serious difficulties even paying, electricity bills. Okay, so we need to provide affordable, I think that's the word, affordable electricity for our educational institutions. We need to make them available, and also our health institutions. That's the only way we can compete, as a nation. So that's for electricity. And let me also say that in terms of electricity, of course, the story with our, capacity in terms of generation. A country of over 200 million people, generation is just, the other day they were celebrating 5,000 megawatts of electricity. Okay, whereas in South Africa, a typical example, okay, we read about numbers that are in excess of 40,000, megawatts of electricity. Okay, and that's a country of about 59 million people. So when you have such, data, it becomes difficult for you as a country to, compete. And that's why even the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development recognizes energy as one of the important pillars of, any country's productive capacity. So if you want to change your economic structure, for example, structural change is also one of them. You must, ensure that the electricity sector, is strong, is solid. Okay, because take for example today, part of why manufacturing sector is struggling, which is also what Elumelu was talking about, has to do with high cost of electricity, inadequate access to electricity. All right. So before you can change that narrative, before we can see manufacturing sector growing, the last GDP report by National Bureau of Statistics, talked about manufacturing sector growing at 1.28%. As a matter of fact, it fell from its previous quarter's real growth rate of 1.41%. So manufacturing sector will continue to experience sluggish growth until we fix the electricity sector. Now, that's so much for electricity sector, we can't overemphasize it. Let me even speak to the other things he mentioned. Security.
Yes, just allow me to interject you, Prof. Allow me to interject you and listen to Mr. Elumelu, where he said, by supporting small and micro businesses, creating an enabling environment, small and medium enterprises can be empowered to catalyze the country's progress during this current transformative period. Take a listen.
One of the reasons we had food inflation, or we have food insecurity in our country, is because of the insecurity we experienced in the past 1-2 years, or even beyond that. In economics, there's this lag effect, certain action and inactions that begin to materialize with time. So the food insecurity we have today did not just happen. It is a combination of the failure in our security system, which we must fix if we have to feed our people, and we need to feed our people. The third is youth entrepreneurship. We must incentivize our youth to embrace the challenge of driving economic growth. We face a choice. Either we offer our young a future where opportunity is outside Nigeria, forcing our best and brightest to live, to undertake tough journeys that split families and destroy lives. Or we create a Nigeria where value and wealth creation can take place at home, not abroad, where our young ones can realize their dreams in Nigeria for Nigeria. By supporting their businesses and creating an enabling environment, we can collectively empower small and medium-scale enterprise to catalyze our progress during these transformative and challenging times. We must not waste the current times we live in. We must use it to make progress collectively as a country. It is, in my viewpoint, yes, bitter and a pain, but not a time to finger point. Everyone, each and all of us, must ask ourselves, what role can we play in making this country a better place?
Yes, Prof, I'm sure you heard that. Two important things: food insecurity, how it affects food prices and food inflation, and youth entrepreneurship. Take it from there.
Yeah, thank you, Solu. But let me quickly mention this point, that this country is truly blessed, really blessed. If you look at the sources of electricity that we have today, mainly hydro and gas. In South Africa that I mentioned, 85% of the capacity, the energy supply, comes from coal. And this is a country too that has coal. So why are we not exploring all these other sources, to ramp up our, electricity supply? Yes, there is the need to transit to cleaner energy, but the one we have, I also believe we can, make use of, to make sure that we attain those targets. Now, Tony Elumelu mentioned the issue of insecurity, as it affects, food production. Of course, that's very clear. There's no doubt that today the inflationary pressure is coming more from food, and if we're able to deal with the insecurity, that we have today, that will also, of course, allow farmers to go to farms. That will improve food output, and if food output improves, we expect that food inflation, will come down. So that's stating the obvious. But I also want want to go beyond the issue of, as it were, national security or security that emphasizes, focuses on the state, if you like, the security that has to do with dealing with freedom from fear, going beyond that to even freedom from want, okay? So the concept of security, in my view, should be, quite a comprehensive one, should go beyond national security to human security. Human security as the United Nations, views it, because it's more comprehensive. Because I think if we go beyond the issue of national security or physical security, if you like, to the human angle, that also includes economic security. It will also go a long way to reduce even the insecurity that affects, farmers from going to farms. Today, the major insecurity that we have today, appears to be kidnapping. Okay, people are even afraid to travel, are afraid to go to farms because they are scared of being kidnapped. Part of why you find that happen is because a number of our youths who are unfortunately engaged in this kidnapping, okay, don't have jobs. Okay, so you can also link that to youth empowerment. The point he made. Okay, so for me, I would advise the government to approach this security, challenge from a more a whole of society approach, a more holistic approach that also emphasizes the human element, that is, if you like, human-centric, as opposed to that of state. Because if you notice over and over, the time, okay, in the past couple of years, what we have done is to put more money on defense. Anytime we see the budget, once the budget is out, you see a large chunk of the budget, dedicated to, defense spending. So we use, a lot of money importing, military equipment to fight, to address insecurity. Well, I'm not saying that's not important, but I think more money should be channeled to addressing economic security, ensuring that people have, basic needs. The more people, meet their basic needs, particularly food, all right, the more they are, less inclined to, taking to crime, such as kidnapping. And that, as I said earlier on, also touches on youth empowerment, which he mentioned. And for me, youth empowerment is about also ensuring that even in education, we are putting more money in education and emphasizing relevance, emphasizing skills that these youths can also have, to something they can engage in that will also stop them from engaging in, kidnapping and crime. So the idea of security should go beyond the traditional, boundaries to extend to, as I said, human, because that's where you are addressing the multidimensional aspects of poverty. Multidimensional aspects of poverty speaks to health, okay, it speaks to education, it also speaks to living standards. By the time we're addressing that, okay, and of course, at the same time also addressing the SDGs, you find out that very few people will have the inclination to go into crimes, because number one, they're able to, achieve their basic, meet their basic needs, particularly food, shelter, and clothing. The physiological needs are very important, and I think that's what the government, should be focusing on.
Well, wrapping up this now, all of these issues again, I don't know if you've touched on youth empowerment, skills acquisition and all of that. I think that's where we should wrap up. How much more do you think government can engage the young population that we have?
Okay, I think, as I said earlier on, the investment in education should also begin to look at relevance. Okay, three things matter here. You have access to education. The government is currently, on that, and usually how governments approach access to education by, establishing more institutions. Then you also have the quality of education. That's another important aspect. But one aspect we have not really taken into we are not giving consideration in this country, or inadequate consideration, is relevance. Okay, relevance. And I want to submit here that given our scarce resources, we should begin to pay attention to relevance. Today we have the student loan scheme, for example. The student loan scheme, because of the paucity of funds, cannot reach everybody. So why don't we prioritize the loans to those studying courses we think are more relevant to our national needs, economic development? Courses like agriculture, for example. Why can't we ensure that anybody studying agriculture is given priority? Because that's also one way you deal with the food issue, one way you also deal with inflation. Courses like ICT, medicine, engineering, these are courses I think the government should prioritize, because they are also courses that give people, if you like, the skills. And then the youth empowerment shouldn't just be for the federal government alone. All the subnationals should also be involved, which is also why I'm happy that now the Supreme Court judgment that has given the local governments, the right to have their money. So I think that will also help, because local governments will now be in a position to use part of the money to build skills, within their local governments, and also put infrastructure. Because the moment you put infrastructure in local governments, you reduce rural-urban migration. Youths can now stay in the rural communities and be useful to themselves. So I think youth empowerment is very important. There's no doubt about that. The three things he said: electricity, security, and youth empowerment, to me, should represent the main agenda, for this, the administration.
Prof, it's always interesting having you on the program. Let me appreciate. Prof is a financial economist, Director, Institute of Capital Market Studies, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, sir.